Greetings! This lesson builds on the previous one to examine an article concerning a dramatistic reading of a hunting accident. It will be a bit shorter than usual. The article, dating from 1993, analyzes the accidental shooting death of Karen Wood in the aftermath, which the authors claim can be understood, quote, only in terms of symbolic drama, one rooted in evolving traditions and communities and motivated by a desire by many to stem the tide of social change. So looking at this article both gives you an opportunity to read about Burke in real life, but also lets you see how the parts can shift and move and perform various functions and interact with one another in various ways. This is apparent very early on as they write about which components of the pentad can do what and in what context. For instance, note how they talk about the interplay between agent and scene with regard to territory and community and social tendencies. They also analyze how hierarchy plays a role here too. Something worth looking at in this article is how there are not one-size-fits-all definitions with regard to rhetoric. You see competing agents, competing ideas, and conflict there between the ideas. This sort of challenges a united, seamless interpretation of rhetoric and rhetorical models. We've got some work to do here, and tensions may well persist. Question 1. Looking back on the article, how do you think various acts of identification may have informed different viewpoints or opinions? The perspective of the people involved is interesting. Look at the victimization section, wherein Karen Wood is depicted as a villain. The authors write, quote, through an examination of the symbolic implications present in both the physical and metaphysical scene of the Wood tragedy, we argue that those who lived dangerously near hunting territory also identified with the sin, but from the vantage point of Wood, the sinned against. Question 2. What were some of the reasons Karen Wood could be conceived of as a villain in the piece? Redefinition happens in a few ways here. Look at the backyard becoming the wooden property behind her house, as opposed to something like a suburban lawn. The authors write, the territorial distinctions implicit within the substitution were significant to restoring a psychological sense of territorial order. They write on page 172 that highlighting Rogerson's ordinary kinds of behavior suggests that extraordinary circumstances must have accounted for his clouded judgment, circumstances most easily ascribed to scene. So this becomes about how Wood was an interloper, how she screwed up by being there, and how this became her fault. And then you have a shift into metaphysical territory, wherein they speak of Adam and Eve in symbolic orders, things that are richer than this happened here at this place, but call upon the idea of this happened here at this place. Rogerson, the hunter, is transformed as well. The bottom of pages 175 and 176 put forward a picture of him which portrays him as a martyr. They also talk about Wood in terms of symbols in the universal perspective section of the essay, evoking some religious myths and ideas about gender, which definitely make the scenario more complicated, yet also richer and deeper than we might at first imagine it to be. Ultimately, what we see here is a utilization of Burke's thoughts, which show us why his ideas, somewhat lofty and a little wild in and of themselves, are valuable to rhetoric and useful for analysis. Question 3. Do you think the results of this incident would have been different if this happened in a different place? Why or why not? Burke remains a really popular and prominent figure in rhetorical studies. A lot of his work is pretty freewheeling and free-flowing, but these readings act as solid introductions to how his thoughts worked in terms of rhetoric and what you can do with them as analysts. As always, feel free to hit me with any questions you might have, and I'll see you online.